There's two of them talking.
Views and opinions are not necessarily that of John Strange, host, guest, and affiliated.
You have everything.
Yeah, it's kind of a creepy place, you know, because there's no light at all.
They do a lot of experiments out there.
Plutonium, nuclear weapon.
Nuclear destruction. They're just balls of light. There's a ghost now.
Indeed. Broadcasting live just outside the Napa Valley wine country through the mystical Sonoma Mountains. This is Beyond Strange. Good evening, everyone. I'm your host, Dave Cruz, and thank you for joining us this evening. It is Sunday, January 5th, 2020. Happy New Year. We are kicking off this 2020 just right for you guys. We have a great show for you tonight. Tonight we have over, 3 decades at least of UFO research and experience and everything that goes with it, along with being the niece of Betty Hill, the famous Betty and Barney Hill case. Kathleen Marden is with us tonight. She'll be joining us just shortly in a bit later in the show. I am stoked. I don't know if you guys can tell, but I am just really excited. I've had Kathleen on the show before with Stanton. We'll get into that later. But it's going to be an amazing show, and I am really happy that you're all here tonight and listening on the Fringe FM. So let's get into it. Follow us on Twitter at Strange Days 2015, trending with the hashtag Beyonders for posts, comments, and questions for the show. And if you want more BTS after the show is over, hang out at the Beyonders chat Discord channel, where there are plenty of fringe topics to discuss with a friend or to get more info about a certain subject. Ask for invite to the Discord channel or go to beyondstrange.com. Click on the chat tab at the top, where you will find a link that'll get you hooked up to the Beyonders chat Discord room. Now, really quick, I want to mention this about the Beyonders chat. It's called Strange Chat, whatever you want to call it. It's there at Discord, and it's very easy to get to. You go to beyondstrange.com, click on the chat tab. It'll give you an invite. You fill it out really quick. It's painless, easy peasy. All right. And there's people in there right now. I just said hi to Bill, and a few others are going to be in there. Night Stalker, Jose, glad to see you. Russ Bailey just joined us. I'm really glad to see everyone in the Discord chat. I'll hang out with you guys in a bit. If you guys are listening on YouTube, I appreciate it. I will not be in that chat room, unfortunately, or on Twitter. A lot of things are changing for the show, and it's for the best. We need to consolidate. So, Fringe FM, Discord chat, Fringe FM for Sunday nights only. I do want to announce this year I am going to start doing shows during the week. And if you want information for that, go to www.beyondstrange.com, and there will be information on how to listen to the show. And of course, the chat will still be in the Discord Beyond the Strange chat room. So it's going to be awesome. I'm looking forward to it. I'm stoked. A lot of nice topics for the show lined up for you already. Get some great guests during the week. It won't be a Sunday affair anymore. So Beyond the Strange is coming at you in 2020. All right. Also, you can find the show's social media on Facebook, Instagram, all that under Beyond the Strange. And you can find the podcast of the show later on iTunes, Google Play, Spreaker, and Stitcher. And please remember to leave a like or a comment for the show, which you guys never do. That's fine. The reason I ask, guys, is because I love to interact. I really want to get your comments. I really want to hear what you have to say about a topic or guest. It's important to me. So, if you're listening on Spreaker, leave a comment. If you're listening on YouTube, leave a comment, and please leave a like. Okay, it really helps the show out. I greatly appreciate it. It's awesome when you guys do that. So please remember to do that. Comments and likes really help out the show, and really appreciate it. All right, keep checking the Beyond the Strange website for future updates, merchandise, and giveaways and prizes. We do have them, just not all the time. But if you keep checking, and if you sign up, a newsletter will be coming out very soon with all that information about those things, merchandises, giveaways, and topics, or prizes. So go to the website, subscribe, you get a newsletter. It'll tell you everything you need to know about the show and what's happening and who will be on the show. Best thing to do, go to beyondstrange.com. I always get asked, Facebook, email, Messenger, where's the show going to be at? What time is it going to be at? Well, it's like I say every Sunday. Every Sunday, go to beyondthestrange.com and you'll see the schedule. You'll see the links to everything. Everything you need is at the website. So please do you and me a favor, go to the website. Okay. Sorry. Don't want to overkill it, but hey, I gotta let you guys know. So there you go. And if you'd like to donate to the show, go to the website. Once again, there's a tab. Click on that. And you can donate as much as you want. Anything over $20 will get you a shirt, a book, something. And there is no janky merchandise. I want you to know that right now. So greatly appreciate it. It helps the show, gets it moving along, and we really appreciate everything. So do that, and that'd be fantastic. Okay, and I know it's after the holidays, and most of you are broke. Believe me, I understand. And I hope you guys all did have a wonderful holiday. It was a great holiday season here at the cruise residence. Actually got to spend a lot of the time with the grandkids. Wonderful. They live in Colorado. We live in California. So it's kind of hard to see them in person. So it was great. But yeah, it was fun. And New Year's is great. So here we go. All right. And, I was going to go over a few topics. Iran is out there. You guys know about Australia is burning down. What I want to say about Australia is I really feel that we need to take some time out and meditate and ask for rain, ask for relief. It's heartbreaking what's happening out there. Not just the people, but the animals, the species out there. They're I don't have to go over it. You guys know. But what's killing me is mainstream media, once again, covering everything but this like they should. I know they do cover it, but they don't really cover it like they should. And what we see, mainly in mainstream media, we got to find out for ourselves. Alternative news. That's what we're here for. That's exactly what Beyond the Strange is here for as well. So we'll probably be doing that more. Again, like I said, in the weeks to come, we'll be doing extra shows, and you'll find that out at the website. But, please say a prayer for Australia. Meditate. It's really heartbreaking. And yeah, that's all I have to say about that. Once again, yes, moving to Twitch at the end of the month. I made that decision. And yeah, so it's not going to be YouTube anymore very soon. So for anyone that's listening on YouTube, let people know that the show's moving to Twitch. And hey, we got to move. We got to progress. So just letting you know. Also, Spreaker will only have 4 shows at a time. Then it's off to Patreon. Guys, been doing this a while. Have been asking, a penny for the MP3s. The shows they've been free this whole time. So we got to do what we got to do. All right. I really appreciate everything and all your support, but we really need to do this. So, if you want to get old shows, old episodes of the show, it's going to be on the Patreon, along with other things like we do plan on doing some investigations, videos. I got an investigation that we did back in October with the Bigfoot. That's coming. We're going to have those people on, my friends that were there, but a lot of that footage will be on the Patreon site. So again, Patreon, we really need your help for that. And then the videos are going to be moving to Bitmovio as well. So, all right, enough of that stuff. Got that out of the way. Kathleen Marden is one of the world's foremost authorities on UFO and NHI contact. Excuse me for a second there. The author of several books, featured on-camera commentator, and an international lecturer. She earned a BA degree in social work and worked as an educator and education services coordinator while attending graduate school. She's a practitioner of regression hypnosis and the Quantum Healing Hypnosis Technique, and is director of Sacred Pathways Center for Hypnosis. Her interest in UFOs and contact began in 1961 when her aunt and uncle, Betty and Barney Hill, had a close encounter and subsequent abduction in New Hampshire's White Mountains. She's a general experiencer. She has been an independent researcher of UFO contact phenomena for more than 30 years. She is an associate of the Mutual UFO Network as director of the Experiencer Research Team, and set up a team of 30 specialists who offer support, non-judgmental listening, and referrals to experiencers, and the Edgar Mitchell Foundation for research into the extraterrestrial and extraordinary encounters, which is free. Her books are Captured, the Betty and Barney Hill UFO Experience, Science Was Wrong, and Fact, Fiction, and Flying Saucers with nuclear physicist, scientific ufologist Stanton T. Friedman. Worked closely with and appeared on the same stage with Stanton for nearly 14 years. Her book, The Alien Abduction Files with Denise Stoner, gives the in-depth coverage on 2 of her major cases and 4 additional cases that she personally investigated. Her 5th book, Extraterrestrial Contact, What to Do When You've Been Abducted, is now available, and she is a contributor to Freeze Beyond UFOs, The Science of Consciousness and Contact with Non-Human Intelligence. Her essays have been published in several additional books. And in 2018, she and Dr. Don C. Donderi completed a comprehensive study on 516 experiencers. It was her 3rd major research study on experiencers. Her 50-page report was published in the MUFON 2018 International Symposium Proceedings and is available upon request. She has given on-camera commentary on the Discovery History, National Geographic, Destination America, Science and Travel channels, and on several documents. Kathleen has lectured at conferences across the United States and in Canada, Mexico, Brazil, and the UK. Additionally, she has appeared on a video lecture series for experiencers in China. And I want to ask you all to please give her a great welcome to the show. Kathleen Marden, thank you for joining us tonight on Beyond the Strange.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be back with you.
Absolutely. Likewise. And again, Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you and to all of the listeners.
Awesome. We got so much to cover tonight, Kathleen. It's funny. I do the show. It's 2 hours. We get an hour, a break at the top of the hour, but it seems like it just goes by so fast. So 2 hours almost seems like it's not enough, but I think it'll be fine tonight.
Time flies when you're having fun.
It does. It really does. And
it really does.
I really hope you did have a good experience with the holidays.
Yes, absolutely. I had my sons here and my grandchildren, and one son's married and the other one is divorced, and also close friends from up north who are moving down here. So we had a house full of people, and it was a wonderful time.
It's so nice when we can spend our time with our loved ones. As I mentioned
Yes.
earlier, Deb and I, we had our grandchildren with our daughter and her husband, and they came to visit at the beginning of December, which was so cool. And it's funny because Papa Dave is pretty out of shape. He found out playing with the grandkids. They got two grandboys that just they're ruffians, man. They beat me up.
Well, you can become very tired. You don't realize it until you
gosh.
have little ones around, and they are very active.
Yeah, I'm pushing 50, and I gotta watch the old cholesterol. So I want to be
yes.
around. Want to be around for them, in the years to come. But it was fun. It was great. We had a great time. We had a blast.
That's
And
great.
I'm really glad this season was pretty awesome. But it's really saddening to me, Kathleen, that we go into the new year and we already have all this bad news. You know what I mean? And what do you do about that? When do you watch mainstream media? I mean, I know we have to do that sometimes to kind of keep our research up to, but I mean, how do you get past that?
Well, it's extremely difficult. I do listen to it every day just to kind of keep track of what is going on. And if you go to my website at kathleen-marden.com, on my blog, on the first page, you will see me expressing my opinion about what is going on in this world, how much conflict and hatred there is, such intolerance. And I have asked everyone to please meditate for peace, for love, to attempt to change this world, because we know through scientific studies that thought can impact plant life, thought can impact cells, thought can impact many things, including crime rates in cities.
Right.
So if we all meditate and try to raise the vibrational frequency of our fellow humankind, then hopefully things will change.
And once again, Kathleen, what was that website? Is it www.kathleen-marden.com?
Yes. And the Marden is Marden.
Yes, there we go. Just wanted to make sure we get that out there to the listeners for going out there and checking out your information. You've been doing this for well into 3 decades. I mean, how do you do it?
I love it. And, I think what keeps me going is the search for the answers.
Mm-hmm.
And when I'm satisfied with that I've found the answer to some of my questions, then I develop new questions, and I just keep going. There's so much stimuli coming in, people wanting to know about a variety of different things. And when that occurs, then I just search in that direction as long as it interests me,
Mm-hmm.
and do what I can to find the answers. I've always been an experimenter and a scholar. And so I come at it from those 2 points of view. I also do investigations. I did a lot more when I was younger. I'm older than you, and so I'm doing more of my work from my home,
Mm-hmm.
and doing the scholarly type work, such as the studies on experiencers, and looking for through archival records and I've found some very exciting information in archives that I've been able to get my hands on. In the book Captured, the Betty and Barney Hill
Yes.
UFO experience, I mentioned a Navy admiral who gave my aunt and uncle a lot of support. He lived just across the river from them. They were in Portsmouth, New Hampshire. He was in Elliott, Maine. And he was Admiral Herbert Knowles. He had a neighbor uh, down the street who was just an average housewife. But then all of a sudden, she started to have telepathic contact with extraterrestrials. And at least that's what they said they were. And and this sort of came out of the blue. She'd read one book about Eastern philosophy, but that was about it. I don't know if she tried meditating or not, but she was getting downloads of information,
Mhm.
and she would just furiously write all of this stuff down, all of these messages. And so I wrote a little bit about this in Captured, but I also knew from the research I had and from what Betty had in her files that Wilbert Smith, the head of Canada's Project Magnet, who had a master's degree in radio engineering, was interested in this as well. And I'd found on Grant Cameron, the Canadian researchers, presidential UFO website, some information about the FBI being interested in Francis Swan. Well, I was able to finally get in touch with Admiral Knowles' granddaughter when I was speaking at a conference, and she came to me with a packet of information, which was a gold mine. This had letters, the correspondence files between Admiral Knowles and Wilbert Smith, with everything that they were attempting to do to scientifically verify that Francis Swan was indeed receiving messages from extraterrestrials. And the federal government was involved. And I found out that there was a Navy man, a commander, who learned how to communicate with these extraterrestrials using the same kind of technique that Francis Swan did. And that he went to the CIA, to an office in 1954, and attempted to call in these UFOs that they had agreed to show themselves, and nothing happened. But in 1957, he tried the experiment again, and this time it worked. And there were people there from the Navy and people from the CIA, and they looked out the window and they all saw this UFO. So in Washington, so they called the airport, the radar tower, and said, set your radar on this portion of airspace and tell us what you see. And they came back and they said, all of our signals are blocked in that direction. So all of these witnesses saw it, but they couldn't pick it up on radar. And then I found out through this correspondence that Wilbert Smith had been attempting to receive verification that these non-human entities were attempting to reconstruct breaks in our magnetic fault lines.
Interesting.
And they were saying that this was caused by the detonation of thermonuclear weapons, that it was very, very harmful, and that not only did it impact our magnetic fault lines, that it also uh, breached the multi-dimensional layers. And this breach was very destructive and very harmful. And so he was actually able to find evidence that these fault lines were being reconstructed in the area of the Pacific where they were in great danger.
Do you feel that there's any relations into ley lines in this kind of thing? I saw a Night Stalker who's in the Discord chat had mentioned something about ley lines over along the Merrimack River.
Yes, and the Merrimack River, I'm assuming you're talking about the New Hampshire Merrimack River.
New England, yes, that's what he mentioned.
And it goes into Massachusetts as well. Yes, and I have an interest in that. I have looked at maps of the ley lines. I was particularly interested in looking for the ley lines in Utah in the direction of the Skinwalker Ranch, because I was wondering if there was a strong electromagnetic field there that was causing the opening of an interdimensional portal that caused sort of breaches of fluctuations in time and space that would deliver a prehistoric wolf into a 20th century cow pasture. And so that was pretty interesting to look at. I had a similar case that I investigated in East Texas, and it was very interesting. Highly credible people, people who were witnessing this. One was a retired state trooper. Another one was a commercial pilot who owned an airport. The kind of people that you do not think of as being off kilter.
Right. No, I totally understand.
And people there were seeing things such as mammoths grazing on a grassy savanna.
Wow.
One time, when he looked out the window of the apartment that he had next to the hangar. Also, there were UFOs coming in very close. UFOs sometimes landed. And then they started taking him, and he didn't like that at all.
No, I can imagine.
But so there was a variety of different types of activity in that airport.
Sounds like the Twilight Zone.
It does. It really does. And, you have to question all of this. But I do know that the Skinwalker Ranch was investigated with funds by Robert Bigelow. And
right.
that the NIDS scientific team was doing the research on that ranch. I know what went on there. And there are a few other places that are having that kind of activity. They're very interesting to me. So, my inquiring mind, I've been investigating UFOs for so long. I have to move on to something a little more fantastic.
Sure.
Just because it becomes boring to do the same old thing.
That's funny because I can't ever think UFOs would be, and extraterrestrial, findings would be boring at all in the least, And what you were saying earlier, and I apologize for, getting you off track. I was just trying to mention ley lines for a minute, but,
no problem.
Back to, to your story about Wilbert, and the magnetic fields, were you kind of getting at to, they were using this kind of energy source for the UFOs, the ships, perhaps?
I know they didn't have that kind of information in the letters. It was basically verification of the messages that Frances Swan was receiving, which were uh, far beyond her level of education or understanding of science.
Mm-hmm.
And there were also messages about how the ETs were willing to help us if our governments were willing to accept help, and that they would not give information to one government or technology to one government to the detriment of any other government. So if this was going to be done, it would have to be done all at once. And messages about how concerned they are about our use of nuclear weapons, and
Mm-hmm.
also what we're doing to our environment. And this was a message, or many messages, received way back in 1954. So that's sort of what got me started now on my latest research journey, and that is into comparing the messages that various individuals are receiving from these beings who call themselves extraterrestrials.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes they'll be a little deceptive in what they'll say. Well, extraterrestrial to you, certainly not to us. So, what does that mean when they talk that way? So, basically, that's my current research, but it's going to be a long-term study. So, because I want to compare the messages, I want to see if I can find out if these really are extraterrestrials, as Wilbert Smith and Admiral Knowles believed they were way
Mm-hmm.
back in the 50s.
Yes, and this happened before Betty and Barney Hill, the
Yes.
case.
Yes.
So there's a period in between where a lot has happened, and I believe you cover some, if not most of it, in your books.
Yes. I
A lot
do.
of projects, a lot of projects, a lot of different things that the government did not tell us. And I mentioned Stanton earlier, Stanton Friedman, and I know that you worked with him for quite a bit, and I was kind of hoping that we could maybe talk a little bit about him and you and you guys and your guys' work. How did you guys meet?
I met Stanton back in 1971. I
Amazing.
uh, I was a student uh, at the university. I graduated in 1971, but this was in December of 1971 when he spoke at the University of New Hampshire. And my aunt, Betty Hill, introduced me to Stanton. That was the first time we met, quite a long time ago when I think about it. But I always admired Stanton because he was so bright, because he was a nuclear physicist, a rocket scientist, who did his homework, who did his research, who presented the evidence for everyone to see, and who had one heck of a good argument in favor of the reality of UFOs. And so I had been to many of his lectures over the years, and he spoke very often at the Mutual UFO Network symposium. And so I would go there to see him. But I was writing Captured. I had started to write that book back in the 1990s, and I had done a great deal of investigation, research. I had transcribed all of the hypnosis tapes that my aunt and uncle had with Dr. Benjamin Simon, the psychiatrist who worked with them back in 1964, uh, during the first half of that year, on a weekly basis, on a Saturday, where they would travel from Portsmouth, New Hampshire, down to Boston and pay for those sessions with him to try to get some relief. So, not to get off track, but I had written a great deal of the book,
Mhm.
and I didn't want to write about the star map. And because Betty had drawn a star map that Dr. Simon had uh, elicited the information about
Mhm.
that from under hypnosis.
Right.
And he told her that if she could uh, remember the star map accurately, that she should go home and draw it. And that's what she did. This the star map as was shown to her on that craft. And then a brilliant woman from Ohio, Marjorie Fish, saw the star map in the first book that was ever written about the Hills experience. And she thought that if this place actually existed, maybe she'd be able to find it, the at least the star system where these non-human entities came from. And so she did many years of work on this and didn't find a match, built many, many models, did an extraordinary amount of research at the university, an extraordinary amount of math, building these three-dimensional models of our local galactic neighborhood out 55 light years from our sun. And finally, in 1972, a new catalog was released, a Gliese catalog that had more accurate distance data. And so then she built another model and added new stars that were now within 55 light years, according to the astronomers' calculations, that hadn't previously been known about.
Mm.
And then she found a match. Well, the problem that she had then was who was going to vet her work for accuracy? What was
Right.
going to happen now? And so she contacted Coral Lorenzen from the Aerial Phenomena Research Organization. And Stanton happened to be a member of that organization. Coral contacted Stanton and asked him to meet with Marjorie Fish. So Stanton did. He was living in California at the time, but he had begun speaking at universities about UFOs. And so he went to Ohio to speak, and he met with Marjorie when he was there. He interviewed her. He was extremely impressed by her. She was a member of Mensa, meaning that she was in the top 2 percentile with regard to intelligence. Brilliant woman.
Yeah.
And he was very impressed with the scientific work that she had done. So he started to look for scientists who would vet Marjorie's work. He found Dr. Alan Hynek, who had,
Project Blue Book.
yes, from Project Blue Book, you'll probably remember. And at that point, Project Blue Book had closed down. He was the director of the observatory and a department head at Northwestern University. And so he and his students vetted Marjorie's work for accuracy. Stanton and Marjorie went out and met with him and his students, and they said it was accurate. So that was great news. There was also a professor at Ohio State University. His name was Walter Mitchell, and he and his students used a computerized model. This is a little bit later now.
Yes.
On the map, and they agreed that Marjorie's work was accurate. And then there was one other person, David Saunders. David Saunders was one of the chief investigators on the scientific study on UFOs, the Condon study. He was a statistician, and he was the one who found that infamous trick memo that said that the Colorado study, the trick would be to convince the public that this was a scientific endeavor, but to the scientific community, they would pretty much know that nothing was going to come out of this. So David Saunders was thrown out as an investigator
Wow.
because he made this public. It was
Mm-hmm.
published in Look magazine, and John Fuller who wrote The Incident at Exeter and The Interrupted Journey, the first book about Betty and Barney. Had the article published in Look magazine. He was a very good writer and a mainstream writer. So David Saunders was the statistician who also looked at this and stated that Marjorie's map was accurate,
Mm-hmm.
and it was nearly precise for the map that Betty had drawn.
Right.
But there were a couple of line lengths that were off, a couple of angles that were not precision. And of course, Betty, how could Betty possibly
Yeah,
make
I
it
mean, this was just like
precise?
it was just like a download happened, and she just kind of threw it on paper. It's not like she was using levels or the straight rulers or any of that stuff, right? I mean,
No, no, she wasn't. And so he said that because of that, the chance of her doing that, making that map just by chance
right.
was 1 in 1,000.
There you go.
But
See?
there were special properties to that map, to those stars. It wasn't just finding a match. It was the fact that all of the stars on that map connected by lines are sun-like stars.
Hmm.
What is the chance of that happening when
Exactly.
only 5% of the stars in that portion of our galactic neighborhood are sun-like, and all of the sun-like stars were on Betty's map?
And and that's what I mean is this is information. I mean, there was no internet back then. There was
Right?
no Google. So this kind of stuff it's fascinating to me, and hearing you talk about this history, because there was no kind of cell phones involved or video or any of that happening at that time. These people who are witnesses to everything that's happening while you're telling me this, it's just amazing, because I'm trying to fathom, how did you guys do all this? You guys have this all documented back in that time period, and we're here still struggling, and we have so many tools that are at our fingertips.
Absolutely. It was so much more difficult
Mm-hmm.
back then.
Sure.
You have to sit down, you have to write letters, you have to go to universities, you have to sit and you have to copy all of that distance data. And I admire Marjorie greatly, and Stanton as well, because he gave his first UFO lecture way back in 1968. And it really took a great deal of effort to find all of the information. And, since Stanton was the person who endorsed Marjorie's work, who promoted the map, who convinced Terence Dickinson from Astronomy Magazine to write an article, to do an investigation himself and write an article on this. And then it became a regular, 32-page booklet after that. It was an extraordinary amount of work. And so I wanted Stanton to join me in writing Captured because he was so involved in this case. He had met Betty and Barney way back in 1960. I'm thinking 1960. maybe 1969.
Mm.
I think it was 68. Um, and he had interviewed them when he lived in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania.
Mm-hmm.
And he was impressed by them. They were there to do a television show, uh, not captured. The Interrupted Journey had been published. They had agreed to allow that to be published. I hope everybody remembers, because there was a violation of confidentiality,
Oh,
and
okay.
their information went public in a Boston newspaper for 5 days. And then they agreed to allow John Fuller to write the book. And so Stanton was told by the radio station in Pittsburgh that Betty and Barney would be there to do a television show. And so he met with them. He had dinner with them, talked to them for 3 hours. And this was just a couple of months before Barney's death. Barney died when he was 46 from a massive cerebral hemorrhage.
Very young.
Very, very young, very tragic. He was really an outstanding and brilliant man, and a civil rights leader in the state of New Hampshire. And so anyway, Stanton had also met with Marjorie time and time again, with Betty, spoken with her at length. He had done a video in 1978 where he interviewed Betty and Marjorie about UFOs are real. And so, he was a person that I could trust, whose work I respected. And my Aunt Betty had told me that I needed any assistance, that I should contact him. And so I decided to do that. And
That's
he
awesome.
wasn't willing immediately to come to agree to do this. He had to come to my house. I was living in New Hampshire at the time. And he spent a few days with my husband and myself and went through all of Betty's files. I'm the trustee of her estate, so I maintain my own copy of all of her archival records. He went through those. We discussed UFOs at length and the Hill case, and he read the manuscript of everything that I had written to that point. And in the end, he said that he would be willing to assist with that book. So I was very, very pleased. He said because I was being accurate and unbiased and scientific in my approach. So I was very pleased with that. And
Yeah.
we discovered after we wrote the book, then we often spoke from the same stage. He would give his part of the lecture on Betty's and Barney's experience and the star map, and I would give my part of the lecture. And then I went on and I started doing the lectures by myself, and then I developed different lectures on different topics, and we would always end up at the same conferences speaking. And we would share a vendor table. And we ended up becoming very good friends. And he, a couple of years later, said to me, "Would you like to write another book?" And of course, we worked so well together, I said, "I'd love to." And so this was Science Was Wrong, which was a lot of fun to write. It wasn't specifically a UFO book. It was about the mistakes in science and huge egos and those people who wanted to maintain the zeitgeist of the old guard, even though they were wrong, and how they would ridicule and push down the younger scientists who were actually correct.
Right.
We thought that that would be a great book to write, considering the positions of scientists
title,
like
yeah.
Stanton, who,
Science
by
was
the
wrong.
way, it was right. And so we did do one section of that book on UFOs and abductions, and also on telepathy studies.
Oh, wow.
And
That's cool.
yeah,
I can imagine how that went. I mean, cards and stuff like that, and subjects and people and all that
Yeah,
stuff.
I wrote that chapter, and yeah, I did a great deal of research. I went to Duke University.
Okay.
Uh, that is where a lot of the psychical research began, and it actually began in the physics department, and then it moved on. And other people became involved in it. They still have a research center there. I visited their research center and spoke with them. And I also did a great deal of research on the many studies, academic studies that have been done on telepathy, and the results of those studies and the meta-analyses
Hmm.
of all of those studies. So uh, it's not all just dry science. I never write it in dry science. I always make it exciting and
Oh yeah.
interesting.
No, that
So
sounds interesting. Yeah, absolutely.
yeah, it was a very interesting chapter to do the research on and to write as well. And so from that, we continued working together at conferences. And Stanton one day said to me that he would like to write a book about Donald Menzel. And he was the astrophysicist from Harvard University who was such a huge debunker, and was also reputed to have been on MJ12. So why would
Oh,
a
this is
huge
fact fiction and
debunker,
flying saucers.
you
I
know,
remember a lot of this. Yes.
yes. So that didn't make sense at all. And so Stanton ended up going to Harvard University, where he had to get permission to go to Donald Menzel's archival records. And Menzel had passed away at that time. And what Stanton discovered is that Menzel had very, very close government connections. He had started out in naval intelligence, and he had been connected to the National Security Agency and to the CIA, and was the kind of person who would absolutely love being on a committee like MJ12 and also writing debunking books. And by the way, his first debunking book I discovered when I was doing my research for fact fiction and flying saucers with Stanton, where he has a chapter on Menzel, and we have many other chapters too, is that in 1953, January of 53, the Robertson panel, the CIA funded Robertson panel of scientists met to take kind of a shoddy look, in my opinion, of UFO evidence. They read a few files, they watched a film. The film that they watched was taken by a naval officer, a photographer with thousands of hours of flight time, 1,000 hours of Air Force time was devoted to the frame by frame analysis of this film. The Navy also did their own analysis of this film. They tried to identify what was on this film taken by this naval photographer. And in the end, they couldn't explain it. It was not birds, it was not balloons, it was not
Hmm.
conventional aircraft. It was nothing that they could explain. So they sent all of this to these scientists, and they looked at the film, and one of the scientists said, "Gee, it looks like the seagulls I see out over the ocean near
Hmm.
my home." And
Right.
the other said, "Yeah, looks like seagulls to us. Let's call it seagulls. Send it back to the Air Force and the Navy for reevaluation." So that was kind of the
Wow.
the work that was done. And what I was leading up to is Donald Menzel, uh, what had his first debunking book on UFOs published in 1953, shortly after these scientists met. And I have the records dating back to the previous summer, where he was very closely involved in trying to debunk all of this with Air Force officers. He was at the Pentagon. And you can read all of that in Fact, Fiction, and Flying Saucers.
Yes.
It was fascinating to do
It's
the
a great book, by the way.
archival research on it.
Yeah, great book, by the way. I did read it, and
Thank you.
oh yeah, no, absolutely. Thank you. You and Stanton came through for sure, and it's a great reference book. Most of the books are that you've written, Kathleen, and
Thank you.
it's just listening to you and getting all this information. People need to realize that there's so much more to what you see in not only mainstream media, but in film and the documentaries like on history and stuff. It's important that we do read and research everything that we hear or see on TV or in the movies, because I'm not going to say that it's fiction. I think there's a little truth in everything, like the X-Files maybe, or Fringe, but you don't get everything, and that's what I'm trying to say is, what we try to do with these programs like mine and others on the Fringe FM and other podcasts, we try to get to the source that you all have been doing over the years, and I think it's just amazing research. And when we get into the next hour, because we're coming up on a break here in a minute, I definitely want to talk more about your latest book. I believe it's the Extraterrestrial Contact.
Yes.
And because I have a lot of questions, and I have questions about not only about the book and the research, but about the individuals who experience these abductions and experiments and all of this phenomena, because I've talked to quite a few people on Facebook or through email, and a lot of them are not happy.
Mm-hmm.
And and they're not happy because they feel they are being not manipulated, but being put on stage. And I want to get your opinion about that when we come back. So, when we come back, we're going to speak more with Kathleen Marden. And, this has been a fascinating hour so far. Like I said, it goes by fast. We're already going into our second hour. So, once again, we'll be back with more right after this. Don't go away.
Is out there.
There's something out here.
And so are we. KTOK Digital Broadcasting, The Fringe FM.
Hey, this is Deb, and you're listening to Dave Cruz on Beyond the Strange Radio.
I warn you, this could scare you, as the sound bothers me to listen to. It has always haunted me. What you're about to hear is very disturbing indeed.
I've seen the Martians eat.
What in heaven's
name is it?
I don't know. Beyond the Strange.
Have you ever looked skyward and pondered UFOs, aliens, time travel, alternate universes, and parallel dimensions? Want to explore paranormal activities, ghost hauntings, various cryptoids, such as Bigfoot, sea and lake monsters? Greetings, Beyonders. I'm author Casper Parks, and you are listening to Beyond the Strange with host Dave Cruz. Help spread the word by posting links in forums and social media. Available at Speaker.com, YouTube, and Google Hangouts.
Tea is the #1 cleansing tea in America. We cleanse you with organic ingredients, and when used daily, you can increase your energy. Cleanse from intruders that set up camp in your colon. Cleanse your colon and feel the difference. Colon cleanses can be uncomfortable. Not Life Change Tea at GetTheTea.com. Life Change Tea is mild yet truly effective. Cleanse your insides every day. Easy to make, easy to use, and feel the results. Are you sold? Okay, then here's how to order. Log on to GetTheTea.com. That's GetTheTea.com. Look for our specials on the front page. Get the Tea also carries top-rated supplements for those who care about their health, naturally. Again, log on to GetTheTea.com. That's GetTheTea.com and feel the results. And for those of you that arm yourself with information, come to our webinar every other Monday at 5 p.m. Pacific time. That's every other Monday at 5 p.m. Pacific. You can sign up at GetTheTea.com.
Welcome back. This is Beyond the Strange. I'm your host, Dave Cruz. Tonight we are speaking with author-researcher Kathleen Marden, who's got 30 years experience into the UFO phenomena and paranormal. She's just one of the great authorities on this subject and topic. And you can find more information for Kathleen at www.kathleen-marden.com. And once again, I'd like to welcome back Kathleen Marden. Thank you again, Kathleen, for coming on the show tonight. Thank you. And it was a fast hour. Gosh, it just goes so quick. And I'm glad this is a 2-hour show because we do have more questions, and I'm sure there's going to be a lot more questions in the chat. I'm glad to see a lot of people have joined the chat since earlier. Jen has arrived, and Morticia has arrived, and Jose, and I'm really glad you guys are here, as well as those in the YouTube. Yes, I know what I said, but I popped in there and I said hi to everybody in there, and I'm glad you guys are having a good time. And great show tonight, and that's the way we want to do it here on Beyond the Strange. Pop it off in 2020 just like this, with all these great topics. And so Kathleen, we talked a lot about Stanton and some of where your experience started from, and I'd like to kind of move on to extraterrestrial contact, what to do when you've been abducted, because as I said before the break, I speak to a lot of people on a daily basis, and a lot of times they contact me through Messenger or email, and that's great. I love it. I want more. I want more people to ask me questions, and if I can't, I go to you, people like you, and friends and people who have a lot more experience than I do for the answers. And one of the biggest questions that comes up, Kathleen, is it's more of a comment, because I find that a lot of experiencers are angry about what happens to them when this happens, and they feel like they're being exposed when others who have like an agenda, who claim to be an author, or who claim to be a researcher, or who claims to be a radio person, personality, and then they basically feel like they're being used, and they're angry. Has that ever come across to you, Kathleen? Have you come across those people who feel that way? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yes, that's the word I was looking for. Exploited. Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I would imagine so. Um, and for those, and the reason why I say that is, like I said, I've had people come to me and ask me, why are people like that, Dave? Why do they use us like that? And it's like, I don't have that answer. All I know is there are people out there who are genuine, and there are people out there who aren't. And there's a lot of people who get on the circuits, and they go to conferences, and they talk and do all these things, and a lot of them they have their own agenda, and it's unfortunate. And I feel that that there are organizations that need to be they need to be looked at closer. And I think organizations like Free is amazing, and I know that you've worked with them for a long time, and I wanted to say to those people, perhaps you should look more into the positive, and talk to people like Kathleen, and talk to and Research Free, and other experiencer groups, and that you're not going to feel exploited, because it's important that that people talk about it. And regressions, Kathleen, this has got to be one of the hardest things for a person to do, because I feel that I possibly may have been, I don't want to say abducted, but maybe that's the word, because I have memories and dreams and all kinds of things where I've had UFO sightings, of course, but I've also had dreams where I'm like on spaceships and in space and that kind of thing. Never experimented on, and I've always felt that maybe I should do a regression, but I'm afraid of what I'm going to find out. Is that typical and normal? Right.
To do, you're probably going to need more than one session, and uh, and if you are eh, feeling traumatized whatsoever, I recommend that people go to a psychotherapist who practices EMDR therapy. That's the rapid eye movement therapy, where it's highly successful in treating post traumatic stress disorder. And I will hypnotize people after they've undergone EMDR therapy because I'm not a licensed therapist. And most hypnotists are not licensed therapists.
Right. Just really quick, I just want to mention to the audience, we had a sound glitch there earlier. It's taken care of, and I appreciate it. Thank you all for letting me know. And yes, go ahead, Kathleen. I apologize. I just wanted to mention that to them.
Okay. So it is helpful for people who want to know what happened. But I really think that you should either visit a psychologist who uses hypnosis in the practice to work through trauma and the events that you've experienced, or have EMDR therapy. And that will help you to remember many of the things that you would remember through hypnosis, just by doing EMDR therapy. But then wait and go through hypnosis after you have lifted that post-traumatic stress disorder, if you have that.
Yes, and I know you talk about this in your book, and about the book, as a matter of fact, what can people expect from the book?
Well, very briefly, the book addresses all of the issues that have been raised to me in the 30 or so years that I've been working with experiencers. So there is a workbook at the end of every chapter, so that people who purchase the book can fill out the workbook portion. It helps you to answer questions that you have, and to work through whatever you have. The chapters are first understanding modern contact, then what are you? Are you an abductee? Are you a contactee, an experiencer? How do you investigate your own contact experiences? Because a lot of people come and say, well, I have these memories, but I don't know if they're dreams. I don't know if they're real. And so in that book, it will tell you what you need to do in order to determine whether if they are dreams or if they are real. And a lot of it has to do with record keeping and inspecting your body and that kind of thing. This is my reality. What now? What if you discover that you are an experiencer, that you are finding these highly unusual patterned marks on your body, or you have conscious recall of being taken to craft, or having the light come into your room and seeing non-humans. So that chapter is written by a very brilliant woman who works on the experiencer research team at the Mutual UFO Network. And we're more of a supportive team than an investigative team, although a lot of our members are investigators too.
Yeah, I've noticed that.
We are on the support arm.
I noticed, I wanted to point that out. Actually, looking into the book, if you look at the contents, you'll see that there's notes here that were some of these chapters are written by you, some of these chapters are written by other people, some of these people, some are a collaboration, so you're getting a lot of information from a lot of sources, and I wanted to mention that.
And of course, my background is in social research, sociology, and so I wrote the chapter on what social researchers have learned about contact. And that's through academic studies. And then when you discover that it may not be E.T., because a lot of the people that I have worked with end up finding out that it's interdimensional entities, but they're not necessarily extraterrestrial in origin. They might be something else. And Denise Stoner, who was my co-author on the alien abduction files and is an experiencer, is a specialist in the paranormal. She's worked in that field for many, many years. So she has a great deal of insight into this. And she also wrote in the chapter, Angels, Demons, and Parasites.
Yes.
Very interesting chapter.
Amazing
I
chapter.
contributed, and Ann Castle did as well. And then another member of our team, Madeline Tobias, who worked during her professional career as a psychotherapist, mostly with veterans returning from the war with post-traumatic stress disorder, wrote a chapter on how to cope with contact. And then Ann Castle, who is a psychic, wrote the chapter on Am I Becoming More Psychic? Because all of the academic studies that have been done have indicated that experiencers become more psychic. And then I wrote a chapter on what to do when you want it to stop, coping strategies and resistance techniques. So it's a pretty long and involved chapter, and it has 12 suggestions on things that you might do to try to make this stop that have worked for other people. And then finally, I was talking to a person at a conference about this book when I was writing it, and she said, will you write a chapter on going public? What you should expect? What would be the consequences of going public? What if I want to write a book about my experiences? Where should I go to publish? What can I expect? So I wrote a chapter on going public. And we also have appendixes. We have Appendix A, suggested websites, and Appendix B, suggested reading. So quite a bit in the appendices as well.
Yes, very chock full of information. And there's a couple of chapters, of course, that talk to me more. And one of those, and let me see if I can bring that up real quick, is the non-human entities. And is that the same as a NBE, I think it's called, or I can't remember exactly the acronym for it, but there is a person that has contacted me once again through Facebook, but apparently they've been known in Europe, and I want to say one of them's name is Ilona. But they came to me, E.B.E.
Yes. Extraterrestrial biological entities.
Yes, that's it. Thank you very much.
You know,
I'm glad you're here.
I just call them non-human.
So they're basically
not
the same.
human, even though some of them look fairly human. They're not human. They don't appear to be from our planet, but I don't know that they're all extraterrestrial. I think that some of them are, but some of them seem to be interdimensional. So, are they extraterrestrial interdimensionals or what? That's something that nobody can answer. I have my own ideas about that. I know many people do, but it's something that I'm continuing to look into, and so is Free, the Free organization.
Right. Yes, Edgar Mitchell Foundation. Have you heard of this case of Ilona and Ivana Podraska in Czech?
Yes, she sends me messages through Facebook.
Yep, me too. And it's a really fascinating information that this entity is talking through. I believe it's Ilona, and she uses something like a Ouija board. You can see these videos, and has you come across anything else like that before, Kathleen, where the contact is being made like this, like it's almost like a spiritual type thing?
Yes, I have. In fact, earlier I said that I was interested in communication with
Yes.
non-human intelligence, and
Mhm.
had been doing quite a bit of research on that over the past 3 years. And I just happened to meet a man who came to the MUFON International Symposium in 2015, I believe it was, in Orlando, Florida. It might have been 2016. But he told me that he had been communicating with non-humans from the time that he was a little boy in England. He's a police officer, and he, when he was 8 years old, was in the bathtub, and these two very large humans materialized in front of him and scared the living daylights out of him. He didn't dare to get out of the tub. He finally did, but then they came back, and sometimes as an orb. And this one who was in this orb, named Ort, would communicate with him and taught him to astral travel. And
Oh, that's fascinating.
so, it's interesting to study these people. And I ended up, lo and behold, he lives in the same town that I live in.
That's
What
awesome.
kind of coincidence is that? I'd never
Right.
met him before. And so we put together a research team of people like myself. We had a PhD psychotherapist on the team. We have psychics. We had a couple of skeptics, and just to study all of this. And during the initial part of this, he actually channeled for the first time. And then he began channeling, and once a month we would meet. We would be allowed to ask a couple of questions each, because he'd grow tired after about an hour or two.
Mhm.
And so now I have all of this information from a 2-year study where we met with this man once a month, and we were able to ask whatever questions we wanted. And now I have to determine whether or not other people have received these same messages. And the veracity of all of this, and try to attempt to determine whether or not these people that we've been talking to, and this is a council of 8, not just Ort, uh, if they indeed are extraterrestrials. Uh, they are absolutely interdimensional. They vibrate at a higher frequency, and that's why we are not able to see them. They would
Yes.
have to lower their frequency, and that's what they said. It's all a matter of vibration. The higher the level of vibration, the more energetic the atoms are, so they become invisible to us because we are denser. That in a lower vibration.
See, I've just started learning about this over the past 5 years. I know there's more people that that listen to the show that they've known this for years, and and I just find it fascinating that this is something that I also investigate ghosts. I like to investigate Bigfoot, and I find that you can probably put all of these together in some way.
I think so.
And in the way I think is it's interdimensional with all three. And I find that, what a person may think is a ghost in their home could be just an extraterrestrial or some interdimensional entity. And I've never, really thought about that until over the last few years. But it's amazing. It's great information. I think it's fascinating.
What I find when I'm in their presence is I have a very strong electrical tingling sensation through my body. It doesn't hurt. It feels pretty good, but it's a very strong tingling, and I'll receive a telepathic message now. They have taught us to communicate with them. And we've asked for evidence too, because here we are, evidence-based. And so they have shown us some evidence. They've shown us orbs. They have come down over my lake with a craft, and I was out at 5 o'clock in the morning, and they still did not show me the craft. I wanted to see the craft. What I saw was water in the lake just swirling around and around, kind of turbulent water. And at the same time that that was happening, I felt the very strong tingling presence of one of these non-humans who was communicating with me telepathically.
And see, I find that quite a bit with experiencers who keep in contact once this happens to them, and a lot of it is telepathically, or they feel it, like you mentioned earlier with the tinkling and that kind of thing. Quick question: abductees. Would you say there's how many would you say are out there? I mean, that you've come across. It's widespread, I understand. But is there a number,
Oh, well, if you think of the world's population as being 7.5 billion people, then, maybe 151 million experiencers. I mean, that's just a wild figure thrown out there.
Yes.
Based upon a study that David Jacobs and Bud Hopkins did several years ago, where they came up with a percentage. But, there are people all over the world who are having these experiences. And, it's with non-human intelligence. We don't know. I mean, some people do know that it's with extraterrestrial beings who are coming in technologically advanced craft, and they are scientists on the craft who are working with them in some way. But then there are other people who are just having friendly contact. Or there are people who are receiving downloads of information, or people who are observing non-humans who are simply materializing in front of them. And, a lot of this is positive. It's not all negative, but then some people are having extremely negative contact as well.
Do you feel there's different species of aliens or extraterrestrials?
Absolutely. Yes. And our studies find that as well. That's a question we asked on Freeze study of, we have about 4,000 people on Freeze study, and the human-looking types and the gray types are number 1 and 2. In MUFON's study of 516 experiencers, the gray type was number 1, followed by the human-looking type. But then there were other types as well, and the most prevalent ones were the praying mantis. Next was the reptilian, and there are different types of reptilians.
Yes.
Some nicer than others. The ones with the tails, the draconians, are not that nice, whereas there are others who are just beautiful and have reptoid skin and are decent. I couldn't say human beings, decent non-human entities.
There you go. Right. Species.
And yes, species. And so, we have those types. And then there are many subtypes at a much lower percentage.
Yes. Right.
As well.
And they all probably vibrate at different frequencies as well.
Yes, I think that they do, depending upon the kind of energy that they put out to people. As theoretically, at least, those who are negative vibrate at a lower frequency.
Okay, right.
Those who are more positive vibrate at a higher frequency.
Fascinating.
At least that's what they say.
Yeah, exactly. And when you categorize the people who are abducted, there's also contactees and other different labels for experiencers. What is the differences, and why separate them? Why not just put them all together?
Well, a lot of people on the speaking circuit have been referring to everyone as a contactee.
Right.
And they say that if you're not having a positive experience, there's something wrong with you. You're immature or something. And I disagree with that. I think that people are entitled to their own experience and their own attitude toward that experience. Don't tell me if I've been taken to a craft and I've had these painful experiments done on my body that I'm going to say, oh, these wonderful aliens are, I'm a contactee and these wonderful aliens are helping us. Because I wouldn't have that opinion. I would be traumatized by that. So I think that people are entitled to embrace whatever it is that they're experiencing and not be shoved into some artificial category. I think that Dr. John Mack from Harvard, the late great researcher, was right when he developed the term experiencer that encompasses everything, because it doesn't imply positive or negative. It just means that you're having these experiences. There are people who are abductees. The abductees are those individuals who are being taken to craft and who are have a scientific involvement with the entities on that craft, whether they're greys or they're insectoids or they're one or the other working with a human group. So they are being abducted. There is a test that was developed. It's a psychological test to identify abductees, and Dr. Don C. Donderi, who is now a retired psychology professor and statistician from McGill University, helped to develop this test to identify those individuals who have the both the psychological characteristics and the secret knowledge of individuals who have been taken as abductees to craft, to UFOs. And so they're just kind of a different subgroup. And we discovered in our study of 516 experiencers that those in the abductee group had certain characteristics to a much higher percentage than the survey takers overall. We also discovered that there was a small group of people who had very negative contact, but they didn't have the characteristics of abductees.
And
they were. Oh, go ahead.
No. That reminded me of something I wanted to ask you, because
okay.
I again, with these friends that come across on Facebook and talk to me about their experiences, and some of them aren't, very pleasant. Like one comes to mind where they show me almost once a week that they've been contacted, and they find that they've had like needle marks all over their bodies, or scratches or things like that, where they didn't have it the night before. I mean, what do you say to a person that has negative experiences and try to, explain, hey, look, for the most part, aliens are benevolent, but there are some that aren't. I mean, what exactly is going on here?
Well, I would want to know if they're being taken into a craft to begin with, or are they being taken someplace else? I want to know, are these extraterrestrials or are these negative interdimensionals?
Gotcha.
Which is a separate category. And Denise Stoner is the one who specializes in that and who wrote those chapters in Extraterrestrial Contact. She would be a very good person to get in touch with. Also, all of the suggestions in Extraterrestrial Contact on how to end this kind of contact would be very helpful. But for that person, there would be a process of attempting to discover exactly what is happening, because some people have interdimensional portals that just go to their bodies or to their homes, and these negative entities from other dimensions coming through, and they're coming through frequently, and you need to get those portals closed if that is what is happening. And there are people who can close those portals.
Would it be in the same way as an exorcism?
No, I wouldn't call it an exorcism. A shaman is trained in how to close those portals. So probably the best person to go to would be a shaman.
That's fascinating. Yeah, I know that there's similarities between these types of experiences and also with ghostly or demonic type experiences as well. Yeah, that chapter that you mentioned earlier, was it Denise Stoner or Allison? I can't remember exactly. I don't have the
Well,
book.
Denise Stoner wrote the 2 chapters on the paranormal and angels and demons,
right. Okay.
parasites.
Gosh, I'd really love to talk to her.
Yeah, well, you should have her on your radio show.
Well,
she's very knowledgeable.
Yes, and one of these days I will. But tonight, this is definitely about you, and what your findings are. And I find it that again, it just, I try to tie everything together, Kathleen, when it comes to spiritual experiences, ghosts, demons, even time shifts or different locations that could be portals, like going way back, the Bermuda Triangle, stuff like that, because that's what attracted me when I was growing up. Were a lot of these stories, and then to find out that they're not just stories; these are experiences. There really are things out there that cannot be explained. And I mentioned earlier that I went on a Bigfoot expedition, and I found other things that weren't, or could have been related to Bigfoot, but it ended up being something different. And I'm going to, mention that. Sorry, I don't mean to tease everyone, but you're going to have to wait, for the presentation. But yes, it was definitely something I didn't expect to encounter, and it's just fascinating, some of the stuff that I'm coming across and experiencing. It's just amazing. But I digress.
It's all interesting.
It's
fascinating.
So amazing. It's so true that, that you get lost in it and all of this. And I just find it, I find it amazing and refreshing, especially from everything that's happening in the news today. When you have 24-hour Trump TV, it's just, God, please, just killing me.
And I think that it is so important for all of us to bring our information to the table and discuss it, because we have different backgrounds, but we've all been, from different perspectives, studying this for a very long time.
Yes.
There was a time when UFO studies and the paranormal were completely separate. And I think that I'm probably one of the first people, along with Denise, who, in our first study way back in 2012, realized that experiencers of extraterrestrial contact, about 80% had paranormal activity in their homes too, that appeared to be related to that contact. So then I just started talking on paranormal shows and said, we really need to cooperate. We need to share information if we're ever going to find the answers. It has to be a multidisciplinary approach.
I agree. I totally agree. I wanted to ask you also, I know, we talked about Stanton and other people that you've worked with. Who have you also worked with recently that you could tell us that will probably coming up more in your books and in your findings and research?
Oh, gee.
That many, huh?
Of course, I have the people that I've mentioned, Denise
Yes.
Stoner and Ann Castle and Maddie Tobias. I think that for the new book I'm writing, I'm not going to have any contributions from anyone.
Okay.
Because it's going to be about my work with Stanton, about who Stanton was, about what he accomplished. It's going to be about my life and how I began all of this and everything that I have found in all of the research that I have done and my own experiences. So I think that that's probably the approach that I'm going to be taking next. In terms of who I'm working with, but I've worked with many people in communication with non-human intelligence, for example. There are many people on teams that I've worked on. Kevin Briggs is the man in Florida whose case was so interesting to me, who allowed us, our entire team, to meet with him once a month for 2 years, and showed us evidence, as I said earlier. And Denise Stoner, by the way, was on that team. And so that's pretty fascinating. So I do have a large group, but in terms of writing, I'm going to go it alone for a while before I bring anyone else in. I think there's a book that I just feel like I need to write, and it's very personal.
Yes, of course. I totally understand that, and looking forward to that. Did you already start writing it?
I am writing it. From the time I submit my proposal until it's accepted and the book is published, it takes a couple of years. So if it's accepted, it will probably be released in 2022.
That's amazing.
So,
yeah, looking forward to that. Anticipating.
I found when I wrote the book Captured, I worked through a lot of grief about my aunt's death. I was very close to her. And with Barney, too, we were very close. And I thought that writing this new book about Stanton would help me to work through the grief that I feel about the loss of Stanton in my life. Because he was a big figure in my life. We wrote to one another every day. We talked on the phone about once a week. We worked on so many projects together that people never heard about. We authenticating documents and that kind of thing. So I just feel like I want to reminisce about him and write about his work, but not in a boring way. I want to write about it in more of a fun way, the things that we did. And I can tell you, Stanton, might blow your mind, but Stanton and I spoke on the phone shortly before he passed away,
Mm-hmm.
and he said to me, "I don't know how much longer I will be around,"
Mm.
as we were planning to work at some conferences, and so we had already agreed that if one of us died, we would try to contact the other one. And so I just said to him, he said, "I'm going on this trip," and I just had a really strong feeling that he was not going to make it home alive. And my husband was having that same feeling, and he's not even psychic.
Wow. Yeah.
And so I Stanton did pass away, and
Yes.
the night after he passed away, uh, I my husband and I were preparing for bed, and I was just lying there, and I'd turned the light off, but I was wide awake. And all of a sudden, I felt a very strong electrical tingling through through my body,
Mm-hmm.
and I opened my eyes, and I saw this little orb, kind of a milky exterior with a very bright center. And I just telepathically, or maybe I said it out loud, is that you? And it was Stanton.
Mm.
And he said, "I'm sorry, Kathy." And then I said to him, "Well, prove to me that it's you. Let me smell your scent." Because he always used to say I had a very sensitive nose. I could smell a lot of things. I could always smell his clothing, for example.
Mm-hmm.
And so I said, "Let me smell your scent." And I got a little whiff of his scent. And I was just so delighted that there he was. When I asked him to come visit me before he died, he said, "Well, it should be easier without a body." So we had a little bit of a laugh over that, but so I guess it was pretty easy, and he did come, and I was very delighted that he did.
That's perfect. I mean, that just it. Gosh, I want to read the book now. And I mean, like I said, and I was really fortunate to catch both of you at the same time at the Ozark conference. I think this was a couple of years back,
Mm-hmm.
and that was also a great time to see everyone. Travis was there too, as a matter of fact.
Yes.
There was quite a few people there. I believe Grant Cameron was there as well. But yeah, it was an amazing time. I mean, and that's what I mean is it seems to me that this genre, if you will, it just seems like it's just going to continue to grow because there's so many unanswered questions, and your books and writings are just going to enlighten everyone. I'm sorry we didn't get a chance to really go over your aunt and uncle's story. I know that there's so many people out there that were probably waiting to hear about it, but I wanted to shift into a different direction because you have a lot to offer, Kathleen, and not to just keep going over your family's stories or Stanton's stories or anything like that. Your research is important. So that's kind of why I wanted to give you more of the spotlight, if you will, tonight.
Well, thank you so much. I appreciate talking about all of my work and not just Betty and Barney.
Yes, exactly. I mean, to sum it up, it's definitely a historical case
Yes.
that is important in in everything that's happened throughout the years with ufology. Do you feel ufology is a bad term for what you do and what everyone does with this kind of research?
No, I don't. I called myself a scientific ufologist for a long time. That's what Stanton called himself as well. And no, I think that ufologist is a good word. Or you could say UFO researcher, I suppose, but I don't know. I like ufologist.
You like ufology? Okay.
Suits me just fine.
I don't know what made me ask that question, but I just felt like I had to. So I appreciate you a straight answer. But no, I think that there's a lot of credibility in a lot of these writings, and I really respect yours, Kathleen. So I just wanted to mention that.
Thank you so much.
And I really appreciate your time on the show tonight. Is there anything that you'd like to mention to the audience, like where you may be going next, a conference or another appearance somewhere? Everything that's you.
Well, you can go to my website at kathleen-marden.com, and you will see all of my upcoming appearances there. I haven't gotten this coming year's up yet. I don't think you can see where I was last year, but I'm going to be getting that up. I know I'll be at the Roswell UFO Festival. I'll probably be doing experiencer workshops at the MUFON UFO conference. I always speak at the Exeter UFO Festival over Labor Day weekend. And because I'm from there originally, so I'm always invited back. I have a different topic every year, but I really love going home and to the audience, and they give me a standing ovation. So what more could I want? That keeps me going back.
Sure.
So I'm doing a lot of that. I've been asked to be a commentator on some of those television shows again. So you might have seen me on the Travel Channel a lot recently, and on NASA's Unexplained Files. I was on Ancient Aliens. And so I'll be doing a little more of that this coming year. And Tom Reed, I don't know if you know who he is, but he and his brother Matthew are lifelong experiencers. He's going to be putting on a conference in October. I'll be speaking there.
That's pretty cool. How about Contact in the Desert?
I don't think I'm going to contact this year.
Okay.
I'm going to have some new material to present there in 2021.
Gotcha.
So, I don't go every year. So I think that I'll probably wait.
Okay. All right. I know you were, I believe you were there in, I want to say it was 3 years ago?
Probably, and I was there last year too, in 2019.
Oh, okay. I was there in 16, so that was a really amazing time for me, and I haven't been back since, but I'm going to go this year. So I think everyone should go at least once.
It's quite an incredible experience, actually.
Fascinating. It's amazing.
And and you have, lectures going on several different stages all at the same time. So you choose which one you want to go to. And then I spend my time at my vendor table after my lectures. So.
And where can they find you on the internet?
Oh, on the internet? Well, my website at kathleen-marden.com. I also have a Facebook page. I know I'm on Twitter and on the other one, but I don't go there very often. So infrequently, I don't remember the name of it.
Okay.
But mostly, I really do a lot of work, so I don't have a lot of time for social networking. Oh,
you're a busy person, yeah.
Yeah, I think that my research and what I can offer to the listeners and the readers is more important than being a social butterfly on the internet.
I don't blame you at all. It's hard enough to just read some of that stuff, let alone be on there and composing all those posts and comments and stuff. It's quite a bit. Yeah. But once again, Kathleen, I just want to say thank you so much for being on the show, and please come back and be here with us and everyone and the audience once more.
I would be happy to. It was a pleasure being on your show. I enjoyed it immensely.
Thank you very much, Kathleen. You have a good evening, and I'm looking forward to your writings.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Right. Bye-bye. Oh, wow. Kathleen Marden, everyone. Again, I appreciate you guys being here tonight, and I just wanted to get her information more. Betty and Barney Hill was an amazing case on its own. And, Kathleen did a lot of great research with, the incomparable Stanton Friedman. And as you heard earlier, she's going to be probably writing a book, or she will be writing a book with her findings with Stanton. So there you go. Amazing evening. Thank you again, Kathleen Marden, and looking forward to having you back on the show tonight. Beyond the Strange is owned and copyrighted by Dave Cruz and cannot be simulcast, rebroadcasted, or copied without written consent of Beyond the Strange. Also, the views and opinions are not necessarily that of Beyond the Strange, hosts, guests, and affiliated networks. Listeners are encouraged to conduct research and formulate their own opinions. Executive producer and creator of Beyond the Strange is Dave Cruz. Co-executive producer is Deb J. Cruz. Disclaimer and voice work by Casper Parks. Visit CasperParks.com. Music by Alan Hall. And Zebrafish. Visit SoundCloud.com/Zebrafish. And also, once again, I just want to thank everyone who reposted on Twitter and Facebook, everyone in Discord and YouTube. Please remember to keep going back to BeyondStrange.com for updates. Register there for the newsletter and all that great stuff. Until then, everyone, till next week, remember, stay strange. Hasta. Have a good night.